Well, not the news we wanted to close out the week here for the Cincinnati Bengals, and they have some adjusting to do, to say the very least. We got a quick video update for you here in the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast. I'm Anthony Cosenza. Big news calls for at least these little breaking news shows for you, bite-sized shows, and we're here to talk not only to update you about the Chase injury, but possible remedies that the Cincinnati Bengals could look at in the short term, should he go on IR, and what the Bengals can do here to help things. Now, first of all, in case you missed it, I will share this on the screen here. This is the Cincy Jungle article, and it has been relayed. This news has been relayed by Malik Wright of the Right Way Sports Network, as well as Adam Schefter of ESPN. Jamar Chase is expected to go on injured reserve. This hip issue is not getting better. And so he showed up mysteriously on the injury report last week. And then on top of that, in the Atlanta game, you saw him hobbled, and then he went to the locker room, came back. And so now it looks like this is a little bit more of a longer term thing, and or something that they really want to, make sure that it's rested, taken care of, etc. Now, it's possible that the Bengals looked at their schedule, they looked at the bye week and all of that, and they say they told themselves, this is a manageable stretch of games given the records and the teams that they do face. Now, this is the NFL. There's no easy games. There are no walks in the park, but you're looking at a Browns team who's 2-5. You're looking at a Panthers team. You're looking at the Steelers, and then the bye week is in there in between the Panthers and the Steelers game as well. So, those are the next handful of games. If you are to miss Jamar Chase for 4 games going on IR, then that would be that would be the I guess the optimum time should it happen, rather than at the end of the season when you're gearing up for Tennessee, Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore. I suppose, when you want all hands on deck there. The shame of it all, of course, is that Jamar Chase and the Cincinnati Bengals offense has been, seemingly, has started to step up the last couple of weeks. And obviously Jamar Chase now is likely not going to be out. Now, Kelsey Conway of the Cincinnati Enquirer, I did see a tweet from her that also mentioned the fact that the Bengals don't really have a concrete timeline on it because of Chase's elite fitness level, athleticism, etc. And they feel that maybe he can overcome this faster than the average bear, so to speak. And so that he can, he could potentially come back, maybe not need to go on IR, short-term IR to remedy this situation. But needless to say, a blow to the Bengals. They're just getting back T. Higgins. Logan Wilson did return to practice this week on the defensive side of the ball, so you like that. Still no DJ Reader. Josh Tupou is probably going to be out as well. So all of a sudden, the injuries the Bengals managed to avoid last year are starting to rear their ugly heads and hitting very, very important places right now. So, you look at this now and, what are the Bengals' options? Well, we can talk about a few as we get here for this bite-sized video here. Number one, they could stay pat. They can keep who they have, and they can work. Tyler Boyd's been doing a lot of good things. T. Higgins, as I mentioned, is starting to get back to 100%. He's doing some nice things. Hayden Hurst is starting to emerge in this offense. And, oh, by the way, you still have Joe Mixon, who is getting more positive yardage these past few weeks than he had been earlier in the season. So this somewhat conservative franchise in terms of huge contracts and all that kind of stuff that, historically has been the case. They may not opt to not go out and get another player. They may opt to not go out and trade for another player, free agency, that sort of thing. They may say, we're just going to continue to alter our game plan. We're going to maybe lean on Joe Mixon a little harder now these next couple of weeks, and we're going to rely on guys like, Hurst and Boyd, et cetera, to step up. And then, of course, this team and this coaching staff has always liked Mike Thomas. This team and its coaching staff have always had high respect for Stanley Morgan, albeit mostly on the special team side. But they may opt to stand pat and just say, we're going to work with what we have, and we're not going to add to the roster here, and we will overcome, especially based on the perceived lack of strength in the schedule in the next few games. Now, there are some options out there. I know trade options as that deadline comes closer and closer here. There, I see here Chris Flaherty says trade for AJ Green. There's some talk that potentially the Packers were kicking around that idea to work for AJ Green. I don't know what exactly it is that would be needed there, and or if AJ Green would be into a reunion with the Bengals, and or what if the Bengals would even be interested in that regard. So we'll that's a name I guess out there. I've also heard the name Brandon Cooks kicked around a little bit because of the speed element. So that there are some options out there potentially to trade. What that will cost the Bengals, I don't know. I will say that if the Bengals go and do this, even with this seeming like a short-term situation with Chase, we do know that certain injuries do tend to linger. But with this seeming like a short-term situation with Chase, if the Bengals go out and trade for a player, or if they do something in free agency, really, um, that's going to signal that they are really kind of pushing all the chips to the middle of the table, and they realize that they're close. They realize that they need to kind of keep pace with a lot of teams going on going in the AFC. So, and they're not obviously they're right in the thick of things with the AFC North tied up top with the Ravens. Ravens have the tiebreaker because of the win a couple of weeks ago, but that's still they're right there. Here's the problem though. If you decide to not go out and get additional help via trade or free agency, we're going to talk about free agency in a second, but if you opt to not do that, that's okay because you've got a lot of weapons, and I think we all have a lot of confidence in T. Higgins and Hayden Hurst, Joe Mixon, and company, kind of doing a lot of extra work and picking up the slack. However, Chase just being on the field opens things up, as we know, much more for a Higgins, a Boyd, that sort of thing. So just the mere, even if he's used as a decoy, which he is not often used as just a decoy in the Bengals offense, but just when he is out there, that opens things up for everybody. And so now things may be a little bit tighter in terms of defensive looks and what the Bengals may be facing going forward. However, we did see at the end of 2020 and really throughout 2020, but at the beginning of the year, the Bengals had no Jamar Chase, obviously, throughout that entire season. Chase didn't get here till last year. Beginning of the year, Burrow and Higgins had a nice rapport. Burrow and Boyd were making some nice plays. And at the end of that season, Brandon Allen and T. Higgins had a couple of nice games as well. So, I mean, they were able to move the ball a little bit a couple of years ago with or without Joe Burrow and without a Jamar Chase on the roster. So that is, you can kind of keep that into context here. The running game will need to step up regardless of what the Bengals do or do not do to remedy this situation. The Bengals will need to be more consistent on. Thank you, Hude. You said it right when I was saying it, and thank you for your generous super chat there. That's going to go help out the Pollock Family Foundation. Of course, you can always go help them out. www.givesendgo.com/Pollock Family Foundation. And or you can go directly to the Pollock Family Foundation website and donate there. They've got some cool prizes there that you can check out. But thank you, Huda. You were saying you put it out there right when I was saying it. I love it. The running game will need to step up. The offensive line will need to continue to improve, and the predictability just has to not be there for the offense. They need to still be able to show that they can do different things on offense. Now, everybody's, of course, the obvious. There's one name I mentioned back in the spring that the Bengals could have brought in as a wide receiver 4. They did not do it. Not a lot of people I'm seeing are talking about him. He is still available. They're not talking about him. They're talking about another wide receiver that's available in free agency out there rehabbing an injury, and that is OBJ. OBJ linked to the Packers and other teams potentially. I think the rumor is that he will not be ready to play until just a couple of weeks here at best here. So Odell Beckham here available, but this is on NFL.com. No one is talking about this guy right here. Will Fuller. No one's talking about him. And he's had some definite consistency issues, but if you want speed, he may be a little bit more of a one-trick pony than a guy like Jamar Chase. But if you want a guy, and he's had stuff, you see there, PED suspension, a personal issue, a broken finger, all that kind of stuff. he played for the Dolphins last year, but this is a guy that you can bring in potentially on the cheap that can come in and maybe keep things keep things moving a little bit, at least add the element of a deep threat potential. That is the guy that I think that could be an option for the Bengals that they could explore. Speed, I don't know. That's a guy we talked about him on the show this last spring when we were doing our free agency profiles. Go back and check that out when we talked about him there. That could be a guy that if you're going free agency route, if you're talking Cooks, maybe even AJ Green, if the Bengals want to go there. On the trade side, Will Fuller, I don't think OBJ is really in the cards there for price and or the injury situation. Will Fuller might be the guy that you look at in free agency that can help you out there. Now, I think it's Arthur brings up a really interesting comment here. What is Lassiter doing? The Bengals could go to their practice squad. Well, they could go to another team's practice squad and pluck a player. That's a cheaper way to go. Obviously, maybe not as proven and or as lethal of a potential option at wide receiver than what's out there. But these are some of the avenues that the Bengals could explore. I would be very surprised if the Bengals don't at least kind of if Chase does indeed go on IR officially. I would be very surprised if the Bengals do not, make some sort of corresponding move to help out the wide receiver core there. I mean, you could have a lot of different options out there. You could even have Trent Taylor bring up bring into a bigger role there. I'm going to pull up the practice squad for the Bengals here so you can see who's on there. There are some options on there that the Bengals could use, but I don't know exactly if that's going to obviously have any kind of a you know impact to the opposing defense as some of these other free agent or trade options there. And then, you see B. Sewell here says we should have kept Pryor. That's a guy that's out there. He was picked up off of the Bengals practice squad there. And then now the Bengals may have to do the same here. So if you had here's another good one from Jamal Willis, Terrace Marshall, another guy that has had a nice workout at the combine there. He would be a little bit more costly on the trade market, I think, because of the youth. But so that's another intriguing option on the trade market. What would they ask for? Would be interesting if the Bengals got him and then a couple weeks later they go around and they play his old team in Carolina. That would be very interesting. And of course, Burrow and Marshall have that rapport out there from their LSU days. So maybe the Bengals do that. I think that's going to be a little more costly because of Marshall being a second round pick just last year and a guy that, just still has a lot of football in front of him, albeit a disappointing start to his career here. So that's a really good option there by Jamal. We'll see if that's actually realistic for the Bengals. Chris Flaherty says Deshaun Jackson, not an option. Deshaun Jackson just got signed by the Ravens. So Deshaun Jackson is no longer an option there. Chris, good suggestion though with the speed and whatnot, but my understanding is that he is on the Baltimore Ravens now. So that is, that's probably not going to be the thing, but are you forgetting we got Hurst? That's how you split the workload. Jamarcus, you got to go back to just about 10 minutes ago when I talked about if the Bengals stay pat and the weapons they have. I'm not forgetting about any of those players. If you were asking me, no, of course, the Bengals have Boyd. They have T. Higgins, who is returning back to 100%. They have Hurst, who has been emerging. So, yes, they have options. One other option that nobody else seems to be talking about or thinking about, and I may be going out on a limb with this one as well. Do we see more Chris Evans in the lineup over the next couple of weeks if the Bengals stay pat and don't go to free agency, don't go the trade route? Might Chris Evans step into some sort of receiver role to help things out? maybe get more work out of the backfield as a passing outlet option to create mismatches. That is a little bit, that is potentially an option that's currently on the roster as well. So that, yeah, Les, you got to step off the ledge, my friend. I appreciate what all the support you show our show, buddy. But hello, Anthony. Could this wreck our season? Not only production, but what he does to opposing defense is worried. I think everybody's worried. I don't think this is a season wrecker. Now, if it becomes a potentially season wrecker situation, if this is one of those lingering things where you go, short term, he'll be back in a couple weeks, he'll be back on after short term IR, and then all of a sudden he comes back and it bugs him again, or it didn't heal properly while on IR, and then you're looking at, wow, is he gone the entire season? The Bengals need to play this one right. And if they are going to be uber confident in who they have on the roster and stick with that, then they better be right. They better be right because this division is completely theirs for the taking right now, and they need to take advantage of that, whether that's getting some outside help or relying on the guys they have here to do that. But they have some big decisions to make there. We'll see there, but at any rate, Chase is reportedly heading to short-term IR. The Bengals have a number of different options that are, they could look at in-house. They could look at on other teams' practice squads. They could look at as trade options. They could look at in free agency. There are options, be it for short-term help or long-term help. That is where we're at right now. But right now, Joe Mixon in the running game, the offensive line is going to have to step up. Hayden Hurst, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins are really going to have to step up. And, you may see some increased roles from some guys that haven't had a lot of offensive snaps this year, Chris Evans, Mike Thomas, Stanley Morgan, et cetera, to help alleviate the workload. That's that. And then, of course, here we go. Houday again with the generous super chat. Appreciate it. Remember the playoff game against the Colts where Burkhead was the number one wide receiver? Yeah, that was, that game. I think AJ Green was out of that game. Gio Bernard, I think, was out of that game. Jeremy Hill was still in, I think. But yeah, they had like nobody in that game. I sadly do remember that game. And they kept it close for about a quarter and a half, 2 quarters, and then Andrew Luck and company pulled away. Do I think that they should, this is kind of the question of the day, Philip McKenzie, do I think that they should get somebody, or is it next man up? I think the Bengals need to get some extra help here. I thought that the Bengals wide receiver core, of course, very top heavy with the big 3 going into this season. I was confident in that group and whatnot for the most part, but I wanted a little bit more depth. I wanted another guy in there that would potentially scare defenses if you put him out there when you do this empty set, because that's, by the way, that's the thing that's also been very successful for the Bengals these past couple of weeks, a lot of empty sets. So whether you put Mixon out there, whether you put Evans out there now in these empty sets, these are the things that have been working of late. So you need to have ample weaponry when if you're going to go 4 wide, 5 wide like that, and be able to scare opposing defenses. So I think that they should probably get somebody. Do I think they're doomed if they do not? No, because I mentioned there are a lot of different in-house options that they can use, but they have to be very, very wise in their adjustments and how they use them. And they have to be sure that these are guys that are going to step up when their number is called. They can't have drops. They can't have missed, wrong routes being run, all of that. So I would like to see them be aggressive and realize that their championship window is still open this year, wide open. And they need to make up some ground with that 0-2 division record, just slightly over 500. I think they need a little additional help. And maybe they go and do that. I think, in terms of contract money, salary cap situations, I think Terrace Marshall, maybe Will Fuller makes more sense and from, of course, the rapport standpoint with Marshall and Burrow, if you're going to go trade route, I think that's a really intriguing option. And then of course, if you go free agency, maybe Will Fuller, just because of affordability and availability. OBJ still looks like he's going to be out a couple of weeks there. It sounds like from coming back from that knee injury, but good question there. And then Royal Flush Terry, Brandon Tate was our number one option in that Indy game. Oh God, don't remind me. At any rate, so that is where the Bengals are right now. Not good news as they head to the weekend and into the big Monday night game. The Bengals haven't won a Monday night game on the road, I think, since the Boomer Esiason days. So they have a big task ahead of them, even with the Browns struggling as they are right now. They just need to get this win, and they need to get that division win, and they need to find a way without Jamar Chase to do that. So winnable games on the stretch. Should Chase be truly headed to IR, which it does sound like that's the case, if not already done since we've hit the air. So, keep an eye out for what the Bengals may do. They may go scour practice squads. They may go free agency. I'm not anticipating that. I'm not really truly anticipating a big trade either. I would say they look at either in-house. Realistically, just seeing this, I would say the Bengals maybe look in-house or get someone off another team's practice squad potentially to help them out. We'll see what they end up doing, though. They have some decisions to make. Some good news, though, as I mentioned, Logan Wilson did return to practice. It would appear the practice report is on cincyjungle.com. You can catch that. And, man, just like when it seemed guys were starting to get kind of healthy, this one hit Thursday afternoon. Not great news, but hopefully the Bengals will overcome. I'm Anthony Cosenza with cincyjungle.com. This has been the Orange and Black Insider with an update on Jamar Chase, his injury, and what the Bengals may or may not do going forward. I appreciate all of you tuning in for this impromptu episode. If you watched live and or after the fact, appreciate that as well. But we'll see what the Bengals do to overcome. They've got a big game this weekend against, I guess Monday night, I should say, truly not the weekend, but this week they've got the Cleveland Browns coming up here. Big one for them, and hopefully Cincinnati can scrape together some wins if Jamar Chase is out of the lineup. Take care, everybody. We'll talk soon. Also, we've got coming up tomorrow, it'll be out there for you, the interview with Trey Wingo of Caesar Sportsbook, formerly of ESPN. He does a lot of different stuff. We're going to have a lot of fun with him. So definitely want to check that out. Appreciate you all. Take care, and we will talk soon.